Picture this. You finally made it. Corner office, six-figure salary, and you just bought your dream penthouse in the most exclusive building in downtown Seattle. You're living your best life, feeling unstoppable. Until you discover your ex-boyfriend, the one who ghosted you 3 years ago saying you'd never amount to anything, is now living 2 floors below you. And here's the kicker. He doesn't know you're his new landlord. Trust me, what happened next turned my world upside down in the most satisfying way possible. My name is Skylar Afefi. I'm 28 years old and I work in luxury real estate. 3 months ago, I closed the biggest deal of my career, a penthouse apartment in Richardson Towers, owned by my boss, Anthony Richardson himself. It wasn't just any purchase. It was my declaration that I'd made it. After years of grinding, saving every penny, and proving myself in a cutthroat industry, I finally had the keys to my castle. The building was everything I dreamed of. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, marble countertops, and that new apartment smell that screams success. I spent weeks decorating, choosing every piece of furniture with care. This wasn't just a home. It was proof that Skylar Afefi had arrived. But life has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? It was a Tuesday morning when I first saw him. I was rushing to catch the elevator, my arms full of client files, when I heard that voice. That damn voice that used to whisper sweet nothings and then turn cold when he walked out of my life. "Hold the elevator!" I froze. My heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity. When the elevator doors opened, there he was, Gavin Hughes. Same messy brown hair, same cocky smile, same blue eyes that once made me believe I was special. He looked good, annoyingly good, in his business casual outfit and that confident stride that had initially attracted me. But here's the thing. He didn't recognize me. Not immediately. 3 years had changed me. Gone was the insecure girl who used to beg for his attention. In her place stood a woman in designer clothes with perfectly styled hair and the kind of confidence that comes from success. "Thank you," he said, stepping into the elevator. His eyes scanned me briefly, that familiar flirtatious glint appearing. "I don't think we've met. I'm Gavin, 14th floor." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled mysteriously and said, "Skylar, Penthouse." The way his eyes widened slightly at the word penthouse was delicious. This was the same man who told me I was dreaming too big when I talked about my real estate ambitions. The same man who said I'd never afford anything better than a studio apartment. "Nice to meet you, Skylar," he said. And I could hear the wheels turning in his head. Was he trying to place me? Did something about my name sound familiar? When the elevator stopped at the 14th floor, he lingered for a moment. "Maybe I'll see you around the building," he said with that charming smile I once fell for. "Oh, you definitely will," I replied, my voice carrying a weight he couldn't yet understand. As the doors closed and I continued to the penthouse, I realized something had shifted in the universe. Fate had just handed me the most unexpected gift, proximity to the man who shattered my confidence while I held all the cards he didn't even know existed. That evening, I called my best friend Zoe Morgan, my hands still shaking from the encounter. "You're not going to believe this," I started, pacing around my living room with its million-dollar view. "Try me," Zoe said. "Did you close another impossible deal?" "Better. Remember Gavin Hughes?" The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Zoe had been there through the breakup, had held me when I cried, had listened to me question my worth for months after he left. That piece of garbage from college, what about him? "He's living in my building 2 floors below me. And Zoe, he has no idea who I am." I could practically hear her jaw drop. "Are you serious? After everything he put you through, he doesn't even remember you?" "Oh, it gets better. I just found out who owns this building, my boss, Anthony Richardson himself, which means Gavin Hughes, the man who told me I'd never amount to anything, is now technically my tenant. The laugh I let out wasn't entirely pleasant. It was the sound of pieces falling into place, of cosmic justice preparing to serve a very cold dish. The next few days were a careful dance of observation. I learned Gavin's routine without him realizing I was watching. He left for work at 7:30 a.m. sharp, always in a rush, always carrying that same leather briefcase I'd given him for his birthday 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I discovered he worked at a mid-level marketing firm downtown. Nothing spectacular, certainly not the big shot executive role he'd bragged about wanting when he left me for bigger opportunities. Meanwhile, I was closing million-dollar deals and living in a penthouse he probably couldn't afford even if he saved for a decade. But the real shock came when I decided to do some digging into his lease agreement. As the building owner's top agent, I had access to all tenant files. What I found made my blood sing with the possibility. Gavin Hughes was 3 months behind rent. 3 months. And according to his lease agreement, he was facing eviction proceedings within the next 2 weeks if he couldn't bring his account current. The same man who told me I was financially irresponsible when I wanted to pursue real estate was drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck in an apartment he couldn't afford even if he saved for a decade. But the real shock came when I decided to do some digging into his lease agreement. As the building owner's top agent, I had access to all tenant files. What I found made my blood sing with possibility. Gavin Hughes was 3 months behind on rent. 3 months! And according to his lease agreement, he was facing eviction proceedings within the next 2 weeks if he couldn't bring his account current. The same man who told me I was financially irresponsible when I wanted to pursue real estate was drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck in an apartment he couldn't afford. I sat in my home office that night, staring at his file, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just coincidence anymore. This was opportunity. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my boss. "Anthony, it's Skylar. I need to discuss something about the Richardson Cowers tenant situation." "Of course. What's on your mind?" Anthony Richardson had always been a mentor to me, appreciating my no-nonsense approach and business acumen. "I've been thinking about taking on more property management responsibilities. What would you say to me handling some of the more delicate tenant situations personally?" There was a pause. "You mean the eviction cases?" "Exactly. I think my approach might be more effective than sending generic notices. Personal touch, you know?" Anthony laughed. "Skylar, you never cease to amaze me. If you want to take on that headache, be my guest. There's actually a case I've been dreading. 14th floor, unit 1407. Guys 3 months behind, making excuses left and right." My heart raced. "Gavin Hughes?" "That's the one. Usually I just have security handle it, but if you think you can work some magic, leave it to me," I said, trying to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. "Consider it done. You have full authority to negotiate terms or proceed with eviction as you see fit." As I hung up the phone, I realized I was smiling. Not just any smile, the kind of smile that comes when the universe aligns perfectly in your favor. That afternoon, I prepared the most important business presentation of my life. I put on my sharpest black suit, the one that screamed authority and success. I pulled my hair back in a sleek bun and chose heels that added 3 inches to my height, every inch of which I'd need for what came next. At exactly 6 p.m., I stood outside apartment 1407, holding an official folder and feeling my heart pound with anticipation. This was it, the moment 3 years in the making. I knocked. 3 sharp raps that echoed with finality. "Coming," came his voice from inside, that same casual tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. The door opened and Gavin Hughes stood there in jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, beer in hand, that easy smile starting to form as he expected to see a neighbor or delivery person. Instead, he saw me, professional, powerful, and holding his fate in my hands. The beer bottle slipped from his fingers, crashing to the floor and shattering. For a moment, neither of us moved. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, shock, and then something that looked like fear. Gavin. Skylar? His voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Gavin. May I come in? We need to discuss your living situation. I stepped past him into the apartment before he could respond, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor with authority. The apartment was nice, or it would have been if it weren't such a mess. Takeout containers covered the coffee table, dirty laundry was scattered across the couch, and there was a general air of someone barely keeping their life together. I don't understand, he stammered, closing the door behind me. What are you doing here? How did you know I lived here? I turned to face him, folder in hand, and for the first time in 3 years, I had his complete attention. I'm here in my professional capacity, Mr. Hughes. I represent Richardson Property Management, and unfortunately, we have some pressing matters to discuss regarding your lease agreement. The color drained from his face. You work for Richardson. I don't just work for Richardson, Gavin. I'm their top agent, their go-to person for difficult situations. I opened the folder, pulling out his lease agreement and payment history. And according to my records, you're currently 3 months behind on rent, totaling $4,800. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our college days when he was stressed. Skylar, look, I can explain. Please don't. I held up my hand, cutting him off. This is business, Mr. Hughes. Personal feelings don't factor into property management decisions. But that wasn't true, was it? Personal feelings were the only thing that mattered right now. The thing is, I continued, walking slowly around his living room, Mr. Richardson has given me full authority to handle your case as I see fit. I can either proceed with immediate eviction proceedings or... I paused, letting the word hang in the air. Or what? His voice cracked slightly. Or we can discuss alternative arrangements. The power dynamic had officially shifted. The woman he'd once dismissed as not ambitious enough now held his housing situation in her perfectly manicured hands. And the beautiful irony, he had no choice but to listen to every word I said. I watched as Gavin processed the situation, his mind clearly racing to understand how the quiet, unmotivated girl from college had become the woman standing in his apartment, holding his future in her hands. Alternative arrangements? He repeated, hope creeping into his voice. Sit down, Gavin. It wasn't a request. He sank onto his couch, moving aside a pizza box, while I remained standing. The height difference, both physical and metaphorical, wasn't lost on either of us. Do you remember what you said to me the night you left? I asked, my voice steady but loaded with 3 years of buried emotion. His eyes darted away. Skylar, that was a long time ago. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, I corrected. You said I was dreaming too big. You said real estate was just a phase and that I'd never make it in a serious profession. You said I lacked ambition and that I was holding you back from your potential. Each word landed like a physical blow. He shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet my gaze. You said I'd never amount to anything more than someone's assistant, filing papers and fetching coffee. Do you remember that part, Gavin? I was young and stupid. You were cruel. I opened my folder again, this time pulling out a different set of papers. Would you like to know what I've accomplished since you walked out? Before he could answer, I continued. I became the youngest agent in Richardson Property Management's history to hit 7 figures in sales. I've closed deals worth more than your annual salary every single month for the past 2 years. And this building, the one you're desperately trying not to get evicted from? I don't just work here, Gavin. I live in the penthouse suite, the one with the private elevator and the view you can see from your kitchen window. His head snapped up, eyes wide with realization. That's right. Every morning when you're rushing to catch the bus to your mid-level marketing job, you can look up and see my terrace, the terrace that belongs to the woman you said would never amount to anything. I pulled out one final document, his eviction notice, already prepared and signed by Anthony Richardson. Here's your reality check. You owe $4,800, which might as well be $48,000 given your current financial situation. Your lease expires in 60 days, and even if you could catch up on rent, your credit score is too damaged for any decent apartment in this city. Gavin's hands were shaking now. Skylar, please. I know I hurt you, but I can't lose this place. I'll lose everything. Everything? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Meaning, like how I lost everything when you left? When you destroyed my confidence so thoroughly that I spent 6 months believing I really was worthless. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild someone's self-worth, Gavin, but success does. And power feels incredible. I walked to his window, the one that faced my building, and gestured toward the penthouse level. Every single day, you've been looking up at my life without even knowing it. Every morning, while you've been struggling to make ends meet, I've been having coffee on the terrace of an apartment worth more than you'll make in the next 5 years. I turned back to face him, and for the first time since entering his apartment, I smiled. Really smiled. But here's what's gonna happen. Because I'm not the vindictive person you probably think I am. I'm going to offer you a choice, and it's more generous than you deserve. His eyes lit up with desperate hope. Option 1, I process this eviction notice today. You have 48 hours to vacate, and with an eviction on your record, good luck finding anything better than a studio apartment in the worst part of town. The hope in his eyes dimmed. Option 2, you can stay. I'll work out a payment plan for your back rent, and I'll even speak to Anthony about reducing your monthly payments to something more manageable for someone in your position. Really? The relief in his voice was palpable. There's a condition. Of course there was. Every month, when you hand deliver your rent check to my office, you're going to remember that the woman you said would never amount to anything is now your landlord. You're going to remember that your housing security depends entirely on the generosity of someone you once considered beneath you. I moved closer, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You're going to live with the daily reminder that while you were looking for someone better, I became better than anything you could have imagined. Gavin nodded frantically. Yes, I'll take option 2. Thank you, Skylar. I'm not finished. I held up my hand again. There's one more thing. That woman who's been parking in the penthouse spot every day, the one you probably assumed was some rich man's wife or daughter, that's my car, Gavin. My BMW, bought and paid for with commission from deals you said I'd never close. I gathered my papers, straightening my jacket with the satisfaction of a job well done. Your first payment is due Monday. Don't be late. As I walked toward the door, Gavin called out, Skylar, wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob. I really am sorry. For everything I said, for how I treated you. You deserved better. I looked back at him one final time. This man who had once held so much power over my heart and my self-worth. now sitting broken in an apartment he could barely afford, dependent on the mercy of the woman he'd tried to diminish. You're right, Gavin. I did deserve better, and I found it. The view from the top is beautiful, by the way. You should try to see it sometime, though I suppose that depends on whether you can afford the elevator ride. And with that, I walked out, leaving him with the weight of his choices and the sound of my heels clicking confidently down the hallway. As I rode the elevator back to my penthouse, I realized something had changed inside me. The anger was gone, replaced by something far more powerful, the absolute certainty that I had won. Not through revenge or cruelty, but through becoming exactly who I was meant to be. Sometimes the best comeback isn't what you say, it's who you become. Hidden Hearth family, I have to ask, have you ever encountered someone from your past who once underestimated you? How did it feel to show them how wrong they were? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Hidden Hearth for more incredible true stories of transformation and triumph.